Pull up a chair. We're just talking blues.
Ross, thank you for joining me at the Blues Hotel. How are you?
Well, I'm wondering if you got the blues, just how sad you are at the Blues Hotel. Is it like Heartbreak Hotel,
Oh, mate, it
down
could
the end
be.
of Lonely Street?
And the Lonely Street, indeed. Yeah. So, Ross, you've been celebrating a massive milestone, and you've racked up over 150 gigs in the last how long?
I don't know, 18 months, something like that. It's about 100 gigs a year.
How do you do it? What keeps you motivated to actually do that?
Well, money's got a lot to do with it. I like to make a living. I'd really have the blues if I was like living in a hovel,
Yeah,
But fortunately, I live in a nice house and I've got a lovely family to look after me and great musicians to play with. I think the thing about staying on the road is you got to really want to do it. And that's what I do. It's like I love to play music. And people in my band, they love to play it too. And, they very graciously play my songs and make them sound good, make me sound good. And we have a lot of time, a good fun together. Yes, there's travel involved and there's a bit of a slog and all that. But when you're on stage, that's what you're living for, really.
Now, you started off in the, was it in the 60s?
In the 60s. So there's an article just popped up by Jeff Jenkins on themusic.com.au, which you're probably familiar with that, called 60 Things You Might Not Have Known About Ross Wilson. And he's celebrating the fact that it's actually, and I didn't even sort of take this into account, but he's saying it's this month, it's 60 years since I released first official single in my career, which was Louie Louie by the Finks when I was 16 years old. And I was the oldest guy in the band. Ross Hannaford was in that band, who later we went on to form Daddy Cool, but he was only 13 at the time. And we were just mucking around. I played a bit of harp, I could sing, and we went in and we were in a hurry. We're going, how do we get a record out? We just went in and made what they now call a garage record, independent thing, and we put that on our own label, which is pretty cheeky. And it made the charts in Melbourne. So that was the beginning, and we were on telly and we're allowed to play at the weekends while we were continuing our studies, and that's what got it going. So 60 years since my first single.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we can say 60 years of rock and roll, but that sounds a bit old, It's like people, whoa, what's he gonna? I get things like on my social media feeds. How good can he be? He's like 77, And other people will chime in and they go, well, I saw him last week and he's moving like a 30-year-old and all of that. And I go, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty fit. Yeah.
Definitely. So from the Pink Finks, where did you end up from?
Well, what happened was that was in my last year of secondary school, so year 12, and I got through that okay. I got whatever the certificate was at the time. Excuse me. But excuse me. Yes, I got through that, and then there were various members going, "Oh, I'm going to go to uni," and another guy's going, "Oh, I'm going to go and do an apprenticeship," or things like that. And Ross Hannaford was still pretty young. He had to stay at school. So it kind of drifted apart. But me and Hannah kept playing, and the band, over a period of maybe 18 months after that, morphed into a unit called The Party Machine. And that's when we first started writing songs. We hadn't written any in the Pink Finks. We're just like covering other stuff and doing rearrangements of blues tracks and things. But of course, I had to go and get a job. So I was working for the public service in the federal Commonwealth government in a thing called Department of Supply, and I was a tender clerk, and I had to put out tenders for things like, 1 million ration kit can openers and things like that, nothing really serious, no weapons or anything like that. I wasn't high up in the scale for that. But the great thing was I had a desk and a phone, right? And I could use my phone. I'd finish a file or something, a stamp, bureaucracy, and then call up my agent. Hey, you got any gigs? And then in other breaks, like tea break, you'd have a Commonwealth service. I'd bring around tea every morning around 10 a.m. and then they'd have lunchtime, and then you had 3 o'clock you had another tea break and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so I would be scribbling down lyrics and stuff, and I'd rush home and I'd pick up my guitar or go to the piano or something and write these songs I did. So it worked out pretty well. You know, how I could call my agent and ask about gigs and hustle on my phone. And so that lasted for like 2.5 years. And then the party machine got big enough, surprisingly, to go professional.
Nice.
And by that time, we had Mike Rudd in the band playing bass. He was from New Zealand, and he eventually went on to form Spectrum. You know, I'll Be Gone, he wrote I'll Be Gone and all that. So we had a pretty tight unit. And but we only ever put out one single called You've All Got to Go. And it's pretty good, actually.
Right.
And a good B-side was a song, one of my first songs I wrote that I felt was like really my song. Like it didn't sound like anybody else. I hadn't plagiarized anybody, or it wasn't neither of the songs were openly suggestive of anyone else, you know. So the original compositions. But then, so because we turned, this is how you get the blues, all right? Get into show business. So we went on our first tour, you know, as professionals. So we're making enough gigs in Melbourne to make a bit of money. And so we went into state for the first time. Well, everywhere we went, Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, we got one ripped off, didn't get paid properly. Or you get to Brisbane and they go, oh, listen, those gigs fell through, but we can get you another gig up the road for like, you know, zero money, you know, £2 or something. I think decimals had come in finished by then. So, the indignity was it really gave us the blues. We ended up in Newcastle playing for like 5 days at this residency on the edge of town, and they put it up in this absolute hovel. The band stayed it, so it was shocking. And it was the time when the White Album came out, right?
Yeah, right.
And so we're playing that on a record player to keep ourselves sane and playing these gigs. Right. So we get up in the morning of having to check out, and the guy who'd been doing stage for us, who was from Newcastle, had put all our gear in our combi van or whatever it was and stolen it. And we didn't have a van. We didn't have any gear. We went back to Melbourne on the train and went, gee, being professional is a bit hard, you know.
Yes.
They eventually found him living in the bush in the van, and I eventually got my guitar back. It was found in a pawn shop in in Sydney. A friend of mine found it. Fortunately, we had all the numbers and all that. But by that time, I'd received a phone call from these guys in a band called Procession, which you might have heard of. And they started out. They came back. There were some New Zealanders and some English guys, and they'd been Norm Rose's band that he'd formed when he went to England and made some singles and things over there. Pretty good stuff. And they were really good players, you know. And they'd had a bit of it was this era of prog rock, progressive rock. So they were like on the edgy part of that and doing all this stuff. And they'd gone back to England and they had good management and they were trying to make it over there. But they had some kind of lineup change, and they said, we decided we'd like to have a front man, and we like what you did with the party machine, or what you're doing with that, writing and being a young guy jumping around singing and everything. Would you like to come over? And considering what had just happened to us, where we were completely rooted and a bit depressed about it, I went, yeah, okay. And I told the rest of the band, they said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Hannah's going, yeah, I'm going back to art school, you know. And Mike Ratz went, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to form another band, you know. So we're all happy. And the drummer, he went off and joined another band. And so I took off to England and had a lot of adventures over there. And by the time I got back, I had a fair idea what I wanted to do. I was over there maybe 9 months or whatever. We played the Marquee Club and the Revolution Club, but nothing transpired. We tried cutting a few sides and it didn't really work out, you know. And that was my English excursion. And then I came back and formed a band called Sons of the Vegetal Mother. It's not vegetable, vegetal, right?
Vegetal.
And they were in this underground scene that Mike Rudd had since formed Spectrum, and I went to see them, and he had never written many songs before, but when I went to see them, I'm going, wow, you know, this is really good.
Mm.
And so he introduced me to a few people, and the Sons of Vegetal Mother was kind of a super group of people from various bands, and we played at the TF Much Ballroom, which was fantastic. And out of that, we had a splinter group from 4 of the members, Gary and Wayne, me and Hannah, and that was Daddy Cool Project. Oh, let's play some old rock and roll. And then we've got these songs. I've got Eagle Rock, and actually, Sons of Vegetal Mother were the first guys to play Eagle Rock. And we had like about 3 guitars and a couple of drummers, and, you know, it was pretty wild. But when we started playing Eagle Rock with just the 4-piece, we're going, wow, this sounds really good. So we played one. We went and played one night at one of those underground dances, and everyone got up and jumped around, and that was it. Over the summertime, from October through to February, we basically, it's the first time I've ever had overnight success. We
Wow,
just
gee.
took over Melbourne like you couldn't believe it. By the time of February, we were playing like the Melbourne Town Hall. We didn't even have a record out, and we were filling it. It was amazing.
So back in those days, did you stick to a certain genre or?
Well, my big thing at the time was I'd sort of rediscovered doo-wop.
Yep.
And I got fascinated with that. And it'd never been like, people didn't talk about in Australia, doo-wop music. It was just like some of that American music that happened to make the charts, like Blue Moon, bomb, 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 ding a dong, dang, blue moon. So there was some of it around. But I found that I was discovering all these, they were reissuing stuff, golden old age albums and things. I was picking those up for cheap at bargain basement joints and going, this stuff goes back to like the late 50s and the early 50s. And I was discovering this whole thing and I wanted to play some of it. They typically have a record that had a doo-wop track on one side and on the other side an up-tempo kind of jump track, which appealed to me as well, jump music with saxophones and all that. And so we were playing a bit of that. And I particularly liked, with Daddy Cool, I liked West Coast R&B, and I discovered Richard Berry, who wrote the very first song we put out, Louie Louie, but I'd never heard the original version. When I heard the original, I went, wow, I wish I'd heard that one first. It's fantastic,
Yeah.
And Etta James and this whole bunch of people around like Modern, it was a label Modern and RPM making lots of great records. And I was sort of, B.B. King, there's all kinds of people on those labels. But lots of groups, Falcons which was Wilson Pickett's first group from Ohio, and just a lot of really wild stuff. And so we were just playing that for fun, but also sticking in my own compositions or stuff. I've wrote a few things with Hannah, like Bomb Bomb, sort of going, let's put some chipmunk vocals. We just muck around and go like, hey, to the bam, 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 like have a bit of fun in the studio. And just captured, when we did actually start recording, we were fairly road. We played a lot of those songs, live around Melbourne, but we weren't exhausted from being on the road. So it caught us at a very good time. And we were still like, Gary and I'd met Gary Young, the drummer, in a job I was working in a book warehouse. And that's kind of how it all came together, He knew Wayne and I knew Hannah. And the other best thing was we could all sing. And Hannah and I had already been mucking around with doo-wop music. So he was right into the do-do-do-dos and all of that kind of stuff. And I could sing falsetto and Gary and Wayne could sing the other parts. And so we had it was ready-made kind of thing. And we loved, and we were all aware of where music had come from. They'd had a lot of experience under their belt, been professionals. So it all just kind of happened rather naturally. But I had Eagle Rock, Come Back Again, Zoop Bop Gold Cadillac, a really great doo-wop song of my own called Blind Date, which is, I think, hilarious and one of the best songs I've ever written. And my take on doo-wop was, it had the basic kind of form, but I'd always stick in something that, like, from other things I'd learned, like I'll go to a bridge that wasn't typical of doo-wop things. There was a sort of doo-wop formula, that most people stuck to. And I'd always put in a few surprises. So, it became my kind of genre as well. Daddy Cool hit the road and, you know the rest. We cut a couple albums and went to the States and it all happened super quick.
I noticed, when was it? Back in, was it 1992? When I don't think you had a very good. Your thoughts on the release wasn't that crash hot either. When they did the dance mix of Eagle Rock.
Well, I didn't have any control over what happened to the records, and by the end of it, we didn't get on well with the record company. The dance mix the so-called dance mix is a good example of kind of tasteless approach to what we did, But it doesn't really bother me now, but it was a bit annoying at the time. And they wanted to do things like, fortunately, I had a bit of say in the music publishing side of things, right?
Yep.
So I was able to stop a few things. Like they wanted to put Eagle Rock in a birdseed commercial with a budgie kind of eating birdseed and Eagle Rock playing in the background. I'm going, no. But if I didn't have a bit of control over the music side, they would have done that. You know, it's just like purely crass commercial, you know, venal reasons.
How easy is it to destroy a
How to
reputation?
destroy a song so that, yeah. So it's like, for instance, Daddy Cool did a song, Duke of Earl, which was a cover, you know, Duke of Earl. It turned up as the Decoray commercial for
Yes,
hair.
I remember
You know,
that.
remember that? Totally destroyed. I could never sing that song again. Decoray, because that's all people remember when you do that. You know, and I'll give you another example. There was Touch of Paradise, which was the very first song I wrote for Mondo Rock, actually, when I was putting that together. Another guy's lyrics, my music. And we played it at the first Mondo Rock gig ever back in the late 70s. But then it took a while for us to record it. And then eventually John Farnham did a nice version of it, right? Because he used to come see us play. And his manager, Glenn Wheatley, owned half the other guy's part of the song for publishing. So you would go, hey, what, we were going to go try this. And eventually Farnham did it. So that became a big song, you know. So then we get approached by Bounty Bars, the confectionery, and their slogan happened to be a taste of paradise. And they're going, oh, we want to have that. And we've got just a taste of paradise. I go, no. Even though they were offering shitloads of money, you know, you have to make decisions to preserve your integrity even, you know. Imagine that, like everybody going around, oh, yeah, Bounty Bars. Oh, yeah, I'll never want to hear that song again.
No, gosh, no. I couldn't imagine anybody else singing Eagle Rock.
Well, there's been some terrible versions, I can tell you.
Yeah,
it doesn't kind of work without those four guys. Except I've trained my band, the Peaceniks.
Yep.
We're really kind of nailing it. You know, it took a while, but we're there. Everything has to kind of lock in a certain spot, and then push and pull against. There's different counter rhythms down the bottom. Well, the drums are going boom boom, and the bass drum boom 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 boom, which provides this momentum, and the bass is just going. And then Hannaford's going bonga doodly bonga doodly bonga doodly in the verses, variations on that, and that's the boogie. You know, that's sort of us, the John Lee Hooker influences. He doesn't actually play that, but like we would listen to his records and come up with our own kind of variations. And on top, I'm going, but which is like ragtime. And I did a ragtime version of it on my acoustic album. I call it Eagle Rock 1908. And it's got a piano playing the ragtime riff. It's got, instead of a bass, it's got a tuba. And it's like as if you recorded in 1908, you know, and it's like, and that's kind of really where it was coming from. You know, I was trying to play guitar like a sort of Mississippi pre-war blues, and that's what I came up with, that riff. And then we pieced the rest of it around that. And then I started writing that when I was in England that time, finished it when I got back to Melbourne sometime later and going, I got to finish that song. And that's when I came up with, hey, good old egg. So it's got like all this kind of blues and roots stuff in the verses. And it's interesting too. Someone pointed this out to me recently. It's a 7-bar pattern, which is also when you do the do the Eagle Rock, 7 bars, and then you repeat again. And then I went, oh, I need something else. And that's when I came up with the chorus, you know. So it's got that, and then it's got like a pop chorus. So all the things I'd ever learned or influenced me, I jammed them all into this one song. And I think that's why it works, you know.
Yeah.
What else happened in that song? Yeah, another thing and I didn't realize I was doing this until a long time later when funk music was happening. And it's like Bootsy Collins, you know, the bass player, and him and George Clinton, they're all talking about the one. Start on the one. And the one is 1, 2, 3, 4, boop. And you hit the next one to start the song. And then you go off and do other things like James Brown. Boop, da da, boop, 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 da da, boop, 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 one. And then something. So in Eagle Rock, it's boom, da 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 da. Then you go all through that, do the Eagle Rock. Boom, da 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 da. So it's all this syncopation that comes after that downbeat thing, you know, down on the first. That's where you spring from, and it's really typical of funk music and all the things that came later. And I'm going, hey, I did that by myself, and that's why it's funky. That's why Eagle Rock. One of the reasons Eagle Rock works, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, magic.
Yeah.
So, do you ever get sick of playing that song?
I don't.
You
No,
don't?
I don't. The only time I would be annoyed is if it's not sitting properly, you know, because it's almost like I've said this before, it's like a Zen exercise. We don't mess with the arrangement, you know, it's not like big solo in the middle or anything like that. We try to play it like the record because the record is, you know, pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And if you can lock that in, and like I said, I've heard some terrible cover versions of people doing it live, and you know they don't get it. And but when you get it right, it all goes and everything lines up, and it's all pushing and pulling and got that forward momentum.
Yeah.
That's when everyone has a great time. So getting that right is the whole point. Let's do it right. That's what.
Yeah.
That's how it works, and that's what people want to hear.
Right. So where did the name Eagle Rock come from?
Well, I'd mentioned before that I'd started writing it when I was in England. I'd gone down to Water Street and bought myself a guitar, and I was trying to electric guitar, and I was playing a bit with the band, but just kind of trying to write more songs. And I came up with the riff because, like I said, I'd already started this style when I was in the Party Machine, whereas I was trying to like finger pick on top and keep the bass going with my thumb, right? And I'd come up with a song, "A Woman of the World," and there's a demo of that ended up in one of my best ofs called "Now Listen." It's got Mondo Rock, Daddy Cool on it, and then it's got a second disc that's got a lot of rare stuff, and that's on that. It goes boom da da da. Oh, it's like boom da da. Dang, dang. It's a similar kind of approach to playing a riff, and so I was going, oh, I just happened to be like working that thing again with my thumb going, and that's when I came up with the riff. And I'm sitting there going, gee, this sounds pretty good, you know. So I go up to Mick Rogers, the guitarist in Procession. I go, you ever heard this before? And he goes, nah, that's not bad. What is it? I said, oh, just a thing I'm moving around with. And later on, a few years later, I heard this thing with Paul McCartney. He said, I woke up and I had, which is yesterday, you know, just popped into his head, and he's going, if I pinched that, it's so good. And he went around the same thing, asking people if they'd heard it before. Same with Keith Richards. He's going like, dun, 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 dun. Hey guys, have you heard this before? it's like it so comes out of the ether, and you're going, you know, this is rather good. You know, maybe I pinched it, you know, but I didn't. It was all mine. I'd been blessed. So it came going, blomp, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah. So how I got to answer your question.
Yeah.
I had the riff, and coincidentally, I was buying. We lived out in Surrey in this big old mansion that we got for practically nothing. It was fantastic, and then we had all the, you know, wives and children and all kinds of stuff running around, having a great time, and drive into London to play the Marquee or whatever, and then go back down there. So there's a lot of room. I was buying the Sunday Times. I'd walk into the local village and buy the Sunday Times on Sunday, and read the paper, and they started this lift out section, you know, like the Good Weekend or something, and it had, oh, we're starting this new series every week, and it's the dictionary of music. So here we've got A, and so in A we've got, you know, atonal music, A, whatever, there's a whole lot of A's. And then we get to B, and this is in the first one that they put out. They went up like ABC or something, and there'll be more next week. Oh, in B, you know, Beethoven, Bach, you know, and then blues. That's interesting. They got blues in here. Blues was, you know, more rubbish. Like, you know, blues was formed in the cotton fields and the black people and the da 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 da. I'm going, oh yeah, I've heard that before. And then they had a picture, very evocative picture of these people kind of a couple of couples in this, what they said was a juke joint, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it said they were cutting it said, and I quote, and don't come down on me for saying the word Negroes, because they printed this, some Negroes cut the pigeon wing and do the eagle rock. I went,
Wow.
oh, and this is a very evocative picture. I'm going, oh, I wish I was there doing that, you know.
Yeah.
And I went, you know, this song I'm working on, it's like that pre-war, you know, stuff. And there was this old dance called the Eagle Rock. I was doing the Eagle Rock. And that's how it all started. And I had various, you know, lyrics like, we're going to rock or we're going to bop and we'll do the Eagle Rock, which is funny because Bernie Taupin and Elton John were inspired by Eagle Rock to write Crocodile Rock. You know, they admit it.
Yeah.
And they used those lyrics that I rejected, rocking and bopping to the Crocodile Rock. I turfed those out after a while because I thought they were crappy.
That's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
What?
So they used the obvious ones that I got rid of. It's much. See, Eagle Rock, anything to do with rock means sex, right? Rock and roll, rock and
Yep.
roll. Rock this, rock that, and bop and all that. It's all to do with sex. So Eagle Rock is actually like the spread eagle, right? You're doing
Yeah. Yes.
Even I didn't think
Of
of that
course.
when I was doing it, but
No.
I was later went, oh my God, subliminal,
Gee.
But there
Never
was a
forgot the
dance
song
called the
about
Eagle
it
Rock.
again.
Nowadays with the internet and Spotify and all that, I went on and I look up Spotify, I think it was a while back, and it was like Eagle Rock this, Eagle Rock that. There's various kind of things, but there's it's like 1911 or something, a million seller called Eagle Rock. And it's nothing like my song. It's like a sort of corny, semi-ragtime, Tin Pan Alley thing that is kind of interesting. But yeah, check it out, because it's like, it was a big thing way, way back. So that's where a lot of my inspiration was coming from, like just the past. And I was interesting that I wrote a new Eagle Rock.
Jeez, wow. That's fascinating. Yeah, you would have heard back in the days some of the blues music that was coming out was like there was a song called "Shave 'Em Dry." Have you ever heard that one?
Oh, there's lots of dirty songs. Oh, so many. No, there's blatant. There's a whole genres of She's Tight Like That. I think those same guys that did Shave and Dry might have done that. Tampa Red. She's Tight Like That. You got to check that one out. And there's Want to Mess with Your Poodle and the long black curly hair. There's like so many. And of course, we ended up doing Baby Let Me Bang Your Box, which is a song about a piano, ostensibly, or like double entendres. I love them, As though we're going like sexed up rock and roll albums, like I would put 60-Minute Man, Billy Ward and the Dominoes, and 15 minutes of love, and they're not going to blow your top and all that. I'm a 60-minute man with Hannaford singing, his low voice. And I did like Baby Let Me Bang Your Box, which is about going to a party and there's a piano, Baby Let Me Bang Your Box. Yeah, sure, guys. And that had been it was never heard in Australia, but that had been an underground million seller in like 1954 or something, over in the States,
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I will right into that, man.
When when was it? Back in the 90s when you released the new Cool?
Yeah, no, that was around about 2007, I think.
Wow, that.
Yeah, and it had some tracks that we had recorded in the 90s when we were going to go on tour with Skyhops, a double bill, and it all fell through. So we had these tracks in the can, and they were really good, really well made, well produced. And there was some stuff coming up, and I went, let's finish off some tracks for an album. And then we got an offer to go on tour with the Beach Boys and Christopher Cross, and we coordinated it all with that. But the new Cool is quite a good album. There's a lot of good songs on that. And I opened my current show with one of the songs on it, Daddy's Back, that I wrote for that album. Like the new Cool, Daddy's Back, which I think is a great song, and it just sounds fantastic live. And that's our introduction every night, even though a lot of people haven't heard the song, it's like Daddy's Back, And improvised lyrics about where we're at and great to be back in your town and all that. But it's a pretty cool song. It's got hip lyrics and all that. I got a few more like that in the can I haven't recorded yet. And they were like a progression from what Daddy Cool had done. Some things were like purely like the old Daddy Cool.
Yes.
And some of the things were like, what we'd become, and still using the philosophy and all that. I mean, I think there's some a great Howling Wolf song we cover on that called Everybody's in the Mood. And then there's Gary Young, Getting Drunk. That's a beauty. He sings that one. And I didn't know when it's a bit like Come Back Again or something. It's called You Can't Have Everything. There's so many good songs on that album. It's a shame that more people haven't heard it. But hey, folks, you can hear it. Just get online and off you go.
Spotify. What's your every artist has an opinion on streaming services and
well, if you own your own music, you get paid more. Daddy Cool, when we signed our deal with the original record company that we were through, all deals were terrible back then. But at least you could still make some money. You had a percentage and you sold actual product, a record. Now, the record might cost $5 or something, and you would get, I think we were getting like, 5% or something of the retail. So you end up with, at least you're getting something. Yeah, and it adds up if you sell enough. But these days, if you got to sell, you got to spin a track, 100 times before you get even like 10 cents or something. If you're on those old rates. So we did a thing which I'm really proud of. We had it renegotiated with the ownership of the Daddy Cool Masters from the 70s had changed hands a few times. The original owner, who was the producer Robbie Porter, he sold the Masters to BMG. BMG eventually got swallowed by Sony. So Sony had these for a while, and there was a bit of a change of leadership at top of Sony. We went to them and said, "Hey, listen, streaming didn't exist back then. There's nothing in the contracts about it, but there had been laws passed that meant that if there wasn't covered, it went over into the new, deals and all that." We said, it's only fair. We would like some more, and we went through a whole lot of negotiations with lawyers and all of that, and we ended up with more, which is not just good for me, but it's good for the estates of the guys, the widows and children of Hannaford and Wayne Duncan, who both passed away in 2016, a few months apart from each other. So I feel we've achieved something there, because to answer you, come on, another part of that question is, can you make any money from streaming? Yes, you can. If you stream enough, and also if you own the songs and the publishing, because the publishing is worth a certain amount as well. At time, music publishing people is ownership of this. I just want to explain. A lot of people don't understand this. There's the recording and there's the song. Now, as you know, a lot of people do covers. They might be selling their recording of a song they didn't write. But if you wrote the song as well as the performance, you get more. So like, the writer gets some more, right? So no matter who records it, the writer gets something. So these days, streaming, for all its faults, is now the biggest generator of income on the music publishing side. Well, it is for me, I know, and also placing sync rights, where you get your song in a TV show or a movie or whatever. So that's all, it still kind of works okay. But the actual, unless your deal is okay and you maybe own the recordings, you quite often won't make a lot, But if it's played enough, say you're a Rihanna and you put out a record and it's played 1 billion times in the first week, you're going to make some money. Because everything's monetized. If it's played on YouTube, if it's played on anything, they have to pay a little bit to somewhere it goes into the pot, and you eventually get it when you're getting your royalties. So don't give up hope. It's make sure you get a lawyer before you sign anything, and work for the best deal you possibly can, and you might make something, folks.
That's it. So, just going into blues, who were your influences when you started?
Well, I mentioned John Lee Hooker. He definitely was. There's a few other guys. Before I became really aware of him, 60s, there was a folk, before the Beatles, there was a folk revival, because folk and trad jazz were big around where I lived in Bayside, Melbourne. And that's because rock and roll had become pop and a bit boring, bit sanitized, until the Beatles and the Stones shook it all up again. And they had the R&B revival in England, and that spread to Australia, and that affected me. But before that, I'd picked up a few things, and one of them was, they had a label called Swaggy Records that was releasing a lot of old jazz stuff because of the jazz revival. And they put out some blues things too, and Boogie Woogie Records and all kinds of stuff. It was in a Melbourne label, and they put out a EP with 6 tracks on it by Sleepy John Estes. It's fantastic. And he had like a guy that he recorded with, played the harmonica, Hammy Nixon. So I'd been mucking around with harmonica and picked up, things pretty quick. But that was an influence. And then I heard the original. There was a very important album that, because of the blues explosion and revival in England, some compilations were coming out, and a guy called Guy Stevens put out an album called Authentic R&B, and they were all tracks from the Excello label. So it had King B by Slim Harpo, and it had all these other tracks with harmonica on it, not always by the artists themselves, but a guy called, I found out later, Lazy Lester. Lazy Lester is fantastic. He had his own records too, but he would play harp on all these other records from down in that area.
Right.
And I picked up quite a few things just listening to him and trying to copy what he was doing, because I had a good ear for picking up stuff. And there was, who else there was? Of course, there was little Walter, but he is a little bit more sophisticated. And the other thing I would do is I loved saxophone players. So I'd listen to things like, Lee Allen, New Orleans sax player, bop, doop, doop, bop, doop, bop, bop, and all this kind of riffy sax players. And I would play that on the harmonica. And that's kind of what little Walter was doing too. He was playing like Duke was a big band song that he covered and all of that. So I'd say Lazy Lester was one of the biggest, and I got to actually meet him. He came, this is the bizarre thing. They had the Hurricane Katrina destroyed New Orleans, and he was living around in Louisiana. He always lived there. And he and, who was it, Betty, somebody came out and played at the Prince of Wales Hotel in Melbourne for a Hurricane Katrina benefit to raise money and take it back to New Orleans. And I went, Lazy Lester, and I actually got in the back room and met him. And it was the funniest experience because he a lot of that Excello stuff is all about living in the rural areas of Louisiana. So they always talk about frogs and snakes and cows and, all kinds of stuff that make their way into the songs. So he performed. He had like a denim, coveralls, like a workman, and a hat, like a cowboy hat. Yeah, he's singing his own stuff that the band had learned to play, like, I'm a lover, not a fighter, and all this kind of stuff. And then he just sing Hank Williams songs. All he wanted to do was sing country music. They just were so influenced by country, But when the guy who recorded them, West, take him into his studio, helped write these songs, and they're all kind of blues songs and stuff like it. So he would like help tailor them for the market. Yeah, Lazy Lester. And I started talking to him about, you played on, Slim Harpo records and stuff. And he said, oh, that's Slim Harpo. Took all the credit, It's like, I've got this one picture of me with him. It's really good.
Jeez, wow. Lazy Lester.
Yeah, Lazy Lester. So he was a big influence on me. So it was like a great thing for me to meet him,
Yeah.
Who else was there? I mean, just the things that were on. What got me started was, this is a long story, but I've told it before. When I was about 16, before the Pink Finks, I was about 15, I got hit by a car and I ended up in hospital with my leg up in a thing in traction and waiting for my leg to get better all over the summer holidays. So at that time, the Beatles were blowing up. And there was quite a few records coming out, and they had, and other people as well, with harmonica on them, like Love Me Do, and You Should Have Known, I Should Have Known Better, and various things. They use harmonica on a lot of things. When I got out of hospital, I'm recuperating at home. I said to my dad, who worked in the city, can you get me a harmonica? I want to. And he did. He bought me one, like a Honer in C or something. And I started just copying stuff like, Beatles kind of stuff. And then, like I said, I had a few other bluesy things, Sonny Terry, Brownie McGee, and I was kind of trying to play a bit like that. By the time I got back to school, I was not bad, and that's when I got in my first band. Because a lot of neighbourhood guys were sat in at a church dance and they were playing King Bee, and I'm King Bee. I wasn't singing, I was playing the harp on it. And Ross Hanover's little band came up and said, we need a singer, we want to play music like that. And that's when the Pink Finks got formed, and that's how it all happened,
Wow.
But the other great thing about having my broken leg was it kept me out of the Vietnam call-up, because by the time I turned 19, my knee still didn't work properly, and my number came up, and I didn't, and thank the Lord I didn't have to go into the army, like a lot of my friends did, and they came out changed people, believe me. It was one of the worst political decisions in this country ever, as far as I'm concerned. And, talking about whether it was political or not, on the day that Gough got in, he let them all out, all the conscientious objectors out of jail. So it was an absolutely political decision, putting our lives on the line, just like they still do. We've got American jumps we follow. I mean, I'm annoyed, still am about that. And my buddies.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Anyway, I literally broke a leg and got into show business.
That easy.
Well, that's what they say, break a leg.
Wow.
But I think I'm kind of proud. It's interesting that you should be talking to me on Blues Hotel, because one of the things I'm proud of is that I've continued to use harmonica on quite a lot of recordings. So if you go to the Bed of Nails was a hit, and a nice little jam at the end of that.
It's actually one of my favorite songs.
And on that New Cool, and even on Daddy Cool Records, there's a bit of harmonica here and there. And I just put out a track that hadn't been it came out on some of my best ofs as a bonus track along the way, a thing I did in the early I did about 20 years ago, but a really great song, well produced, and it's got harmonica through it. It's called Slave to My Emotions. And I was going through, some of the Mondo rock stuff. There's Primitive Love Rights. And I've had this thing of, if I think it's appropriate, I'll put in a harp riff here and there and use it in a kind of pop context, which is, because that's my two worlds. Oh, I'll tell you something about that. My two worlds. The Melbourne Cup one year, there was two Japanese horses running, and I don't bet much. My wife's the punter in the family. And I looked and I went, oh, look, there's two Japanese horses running. One's called Pop Rock and the other one's called Delta Blues. I went, that's my life.
Yeah.
So I put them on as a Quinella, and I won. They came in first and second. I won like $500 or something for hardly any money. I went, that's a sign. Pop rock and Delta Blues. I'm going with that.
Jeez.
And that summed it all up. So the gods were smiling. They legitimized my philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. Your latest, well, I wouldn't say latest work because it came out a few years ago now. What was it called?
EP.
The EP with
that's about 2 years old now. It came out in June 2023. It's an EP, and it is harking back to my blues roots, and it's got harmonica on it, and the title track is She's Stuck on Facebook All the Time, which is a song that I workshopped live for a while and was always getting a good reaction.
Yeah.
And it's a blues, but it's got a few surprises in it, and it's got harmonica all through it, and fantastic guitar by James Ryan, who plays guitar with me, and he produced the track. And there's another song called Desolation Blues, which is still lyrics very, pointedly about what goes on in politics here and abroad. And I wrote that one during lockdown, so it's got sort of references that you might pick up there.
Yeah.
What's the other one? There's Housewife in a Floral Dress, which I wrote with 8-Ball Aitken.
8-Ball Aitken, really?
Yeah. He came to town and we got together and we wrote that a while back, and so I did a version of that. And another one that is got direct kind of influence from the way I hear John Lee Hooker and apply it to myself. No Fool Quite Like Me. No Fool Quite Like Me. And that's I got a lot into trouble with my wife about that one. Actually, I got into trouble about that whole EP.
I'm sure you did.
She says, you're thinking about me. And, I go, no, it's not about you. Like, she's stuck on Facebook all the time. It's about social media and its influence on people, and how they don't got no time for each other anymore. And at the start, I've got this thing I do with the band, hey, fellas, it's like James Brown. Hey, fellas. And they're going, yeah, what? And I go like, number one cause of the blues. And they go, Facebook. Ain't got no time for loving. Always checking up on all the friends. So check that one out, folks, because that's my latest offering.
Definitely. Tell us, why has it taken so long for you to release anything?
Well, I don't actually have a record deal with anyone specifically in there, so there's not pushing me. So I'm a bit slack in that regard. I think kind of the downturn when we all got locked up might have slowed things down. I kind of enjoyed having a rest, actually. I did come up with a few things in lockdown, but I'm very determined to put another album together. And the only thing that stopped me is because I've got some really, really good songs and I want them to be done well, So I've got to choose the musicians. I like working with other producers, but I got to find a good producer, so you get a bit of arm's length kind of opinion coming in. And but I've got a much better idea of what I want to do now. And the reason I'm releasing some of these songs, which haven't been streamed before, but are really good, like Slave to My Emotion. In a couple of weeks, they're going to have my solo version of A Touch of Paradise, which is really good.
That's going to be...
Once again, it was a bonus track on a best of, but it's never been out in streaming. So I'm putting those out as a bit of a stopgap while I gather my forces together to record more songs. I've got a couple of things in the vault that I've recorded already, and I just got to add some more. The other thing, one of the reasons I released an EP was because albums are almost redundant now. It's gone back to being like the 60s where you release singles. And that's what people are doing now. There's because you put out one song, and if it can get over the hump, that's all they want to listen to. They'll add it to playlists and stuff, and your album will just sit there, and it'll have this one song with shitloads of streaming, and the other was all go, you know, like to download
Yeah.
that thing. So
Gone are the days where people used to listen to a complete album all the way through.
yeah, doesn't happen that often these days.
No, no.
Short attention spans, and you'll notice with that in mind,
Mm.
particularly in the pop world, songs have become real short again. They'll go for like 2 minutes or 2:10 or something like that, because you got to grab the people, and then people get bored so quickly. They're all flipping through, you know, didn't get the chorus fast enough. It's like the old kind of pop sensibility has come back. And, you know, and there's not only that, it's an avalanche of music. Some ridiculous amount of new stuff gets released every week. So trying to get people involved is hard, but fortunately I can do that a bit through my live performances and, hey, talking to you.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So what's next for you, Ross? How much longer are you on this 50 years of hits tour
Well,
for?
I do have a work kind of template,
Okay.
and it is work really hard.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm doing about 100 gigs a year, which
Mhm.
comes down to, we have breaks here and there, you know, but right now we're doing like 3 to 4 shows a week. Some are pubs, some are the theatres, some are little festivals. And so I work real hard and then go away, usually to Greece, because my wife's family have got strong roots there, and we've been doing that for quite a while now. Go over to Greece and got a few places that we go and hang out and just chill and don't really do anything really, you know. Eat good food and soak up the sun while it's cold in Melbourne. So I'm playing at the Monday Bash, which is a huge event out near Broken Hill. And as soon as I get back to Melbourne after that, I'm off to Greece. And there's also a little side trip. So I'll be away all September. One of the reasons I go away at that period is because I've discovered that during September, everyone's so obsessed with footy. Unless you're doing a few footy gigs, you might as well just go away.
Exactly. That's it.
Perfect timing, you know. So we'll be over in Europe, and I've got my youngest daughter. His name's Athena. She fronts a fantastic band called Gut Health. Gut Health, folks. If you're Googling it, go for Gut Health Band, or you'll get a whole lot of stuff about probiotics. They're making waves, and they're going off to their third trip to Europe. So when I land in Athens, we're going straight away to Geneva to see them play at a festival, and then the next day to Berlin to see them play. So this is going to be a fantastic trip we're taking, and then we go off to a Greek island called Koufanissi and hang there for a few weeks, and then, you know, on and on and on, and then come back to Melbourne and back into it.
Right.
You
haven't got any connections with Clive Palmer, have you?
Me? No, that's Russell Morris you're thinking of. No, I would never do anything with him.
Oh, cheated.
Clive Palmer, that is. I do stuff with Russell, but no, he's no, I'm not with the yellow man, you know.
I was quite fascinated when
I've noticed that.
started.
I'm just jumping to conclusions here, but I noticed Russell Morris is doing his farewell tour. He probably got paid so much by Clive Palmer he can retire. That's not going to happen with me. I'm not retiring. Forget it.
No. It's.
I don't know why you asked that question. Why would you think I would be with Clive Palmer?
I was just thinking about Russell Morris. That's all. Sorry.
Yeah. Russell Morris, this might surprise people. I don't like to talk about people's politics, but he's quite a right winger, whereas I consider myself more lefty, you know. It surprised me the guy who sings the real thing, the big psychedelic monstrous song, he's a bit of he's a bit over.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
But I like him. He's still a friend of mine. Sorry, Russell, I'm airing your politics there.
Yes. No, he comes over here a fair bit, or he has in the past.
Well, his farewell tour is coming up, but he's fudged it. He said it's my farewell tour, but I might do the odd gig here and there after that. So okay, yeah.
John Farnham.
Well, he's learned from Farnham's mistake. Yeah.
All right, Ross. Look, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to let you go.
Well, just reminding everybody, like, if you want to hear me play some pretty good harp and bluesy kind of stuff, check out my EP. She's stuck on Facebook all the time. I'm sure you'll love it. And the latest track I just put up a couple of days last week, Slave to My Emotions, which is just one of my best things I've ever done. Oh, there's an EP, a Slave to My Emotions EP, that'll have Slave to My Emotions, my solo version of Touch of Paradise, and another fantastic lost track called The Same As Me, which...
is that the one you've not long released?
It's coming out, well, they do what you call waterfalling, where you have like an EP and then they're released the tracks one by one, and then finally you get it's an EP, 3-track EP, yeah, as the final thing. It's the new way of doing stuff, waterfalling.
Right.
Yeah. I'm on tour, and as we speak, I'm in Brisbane, and then next week I'm doing some of the regional areas of New South Wales, Bathurst and Canberra. That's all next week.
Yep.
And then off to Tassie in the dead of winter. No outdoor gigs there.
Keep rugged up there.
Yeah, there we go. Theatres, Launceston, Hobart and Burnie, and then popping up somewhere. But I've just been in Perth, so you missed me.
Yeah, bugger.
But we'll be back. Don't worry about that.
Sure.
When I get back from my spring break, it's straight into summertime gigs.
Summertime gigs. Fantastic. All right, Ross. Again, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and good luck with the rest of your tour.
Yeah, thanks. Having a great time out on the road. Like I said, I got a great band, the Peaceniks, named after my song "I Come in Peace." Helped my head out. So the Peaceniks, bringing peace and happiness and music to your neighbourhood.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much, and we'll maybe chat again one day.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ross.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.